Hello everyone and welcome back to this next lecture. So in this lecture I'll describe the software requirements of this course. So in this course, since we are programming the Texas Instruments F28379D microcontroller, we will be using Code Composer Studio IDE. Right? Now there may be other ways to program, but in my opinion the Code Composer Studio IDE offers every functionality to write your programs, to compile your programs, and also to download it onto the final microcontroller. Right? So therefore these are all features provided in one single software, and this is what I'll be using in this particular course. Now if you have already taken my course on the basic course on F28379D microcontroller, I have described how to install it, how to set it up, and also how to install the C2000ware package, which contains example code as well as all the header files and source files which are needed, right? So if you are not familiar with these, again, go back and check out those sections where I talk about how the system can be set up in that particular basic course. In this course, as I already said, I will not be talking about how you use Code Composer Studio and how to create projects and execute projects. I am assuming that you know about this, either on your own or from my previous course. So therefore, you must be familiar with installing Code Composer Studio, on how to create new projects, how to execute those projects, and how to finally observe the debug mode where you can measure, not only can you also execute your code, but you can also observe variables. So these are aspects that you should be familiar with before you start this course. This course also needs QSpice provided by Qorvo. So QSpice is a free circuit simulation software. It is one of the latest SPICE simulators created by Mike Engelhardt, who also had created LTSpice that was provided by Analog Devices. And now QSpice is the latest SPICE software. It has now achieved a great deal of convergence issues which were there with other versions of SPICE, and also it has now achieved a great deal of speed. And one of the best features of QSpice is that you can now write your control code using C programming or Verilog, which you could not do with earlier versions of SPICE, where all your control had to be implemented using analog or digital circuits. The only limitation so far is that QSpice works only with either Windows 11 or the 64-bit edition of Windows 10. It doesn't have a Linux version and it doesn't have a Mac OS version. So even though Code Composer Studio does come in other flavors such as with Linux and for Mac OS, QSpice is only available with Windows. So therefore in this course I'll be using a Windows 11 machine, and I would suggest that you should do the same as well. Now the student should be familiar with creating simulations with QSpice, writing control blocks with C language, and also basic SPICE directives to execute simulations and view plots. And all this can be found in my basic courses with QSpice, which again I have listed as requirements in this particular course. So check out the course description where I have listed the requirements, and one of the requirements is the PWM strategies with QSpice course, which I have created also on Udemy. So this course will be fully focused on PWM strategies. So I'm not going to talk about anything else. I won't talk about the ADC module. I won't talk about anything else, just PWM. So this is one of the objectives which I have going further. That is, now that I've covered a basic course on microcontroller programming, I want to now start focusing on specialized courses which can go on to become more advanced courses on control implementation and on power electronics applications. So therefore, I won't talk about anything other than PWMs. So therefore, before you start this course, I would say be familiar with the enhanced pulse width modulation module of the F28379D microcontroller. That is, you must know how it can be configured, all the different configuration registers, and how to generate pulses using this EPWM module. That's all you need. You don't need to know advanced strategies. Those strategies will be covered in this course. All you need to know is how to use the EPWM module. So there are two ways to write programs for the F28379D microcontroller. There is the bit field approach and there is the driver lib approach. Now, if you take a look at the users of Texas Instruments microcontrollers, they are almost 50-50. That is, it's a 50% split between these two approaches. I will be using the bit field approach when I write programs. However, after I finish the bit field approach, I will describe the code which I have written using driver lib approach as well. Only I will not write the entire driver lib program from scratch. To save time, I don't want this course to become too long. If you want to know how to write the driver lib code from scratch, then check out my basic course on the F28379D microcontroller, where I describe in detail how you can create projects using the driver lib approach. So now both approaches will be made available in each project, and that is because this F28379D microcontroller is a dual CPU microcontroller, which means it has two processors, CPU1 and CPU2. So therefore, I'll be programming CPU1 with the bit field approach, and I'll be programming CPU2 with the driver lib approach. I'll be doing the bit field approach from scratch, and I will be describing the code in the driver lib after I'm done with the bit field. This is just so that you have both of these as resources for your future work. Finally, I would suggest that you should be familiar with reading the technical reference manual of the F28379D. This is something again I have described in my basic course. I've told you how you can download it, how you can read it, and which are the relevant parts. And I will be using it here also in this course, because as I write the code, I will always be referring to the technical reference manual and what needs to be done there. So these are the software requirements of this course. Specifically, I would say you need Code Composer Studio, you need QSpice, you need a Windows machine, and finally, you must know the basic programming of the F28379D microcontroller and some basic QSpice simulations as well. So you could say this is an intermediate level course. So please come with some preparations. As I already said, both the resources for all these are already available, and I have listed as the requirements for this course. If you are a newcomer to power electronics, you're a newcomer to simulations, or you're a newcomer to microcontroller programming, then go ahead, check out those resources before you start this course. If you have any other doubts, please post in the Q&A forum and I'll be happy to help you. Otherwise, I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you so much for listening and see you soon. Goodbye for now.